Y'all, we are a day late. And once again, that was my brain in action. I knew what I wanted to talk about for the week. I had prepared. I even took notes. Now, granted, I do have to get out of the habit of trying to record on the day that I'm going to drop the episode. But yesterday, when I went to record, I was like, you know what? This can be a bi weekly thing. I don't got to do this every week. And that's fine. It could be a bi weekly thing. But that's not why I said that. I, for one, was trying to get out of the obligation of having to do this. Um, and sorry, my dog is stretching out. um, yeah, I was trying to get out of the obligation of having to do this. And for myself, if I am not active on stuff, then I will continue to push it out. It would have probably ended up being like a monthly podcast, right? Because once again, for me, this is hard. I feel quite awkward in front of the camera. I still don't know. Like I said, I took notes, but I don't know if the way that I took notes is going to be conducive to actually doing this, whatever. But we are here, and welcome to a Tad Unrighteous, episode 2. I'm your host, Zephyr Joel. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed your holiday. Um, well, before we get into what we're going to talk about, I kind of want to take the moment to set up a little bit of background about myself, right? I am from a very rural area. Um, if you give me a second, for those of y'all that are listening, um, let me look up really quick to show y'all exactly how small. Okay, so in around the year 2000, there were 406 people living there, and in 2020 it dropped down to 246 people, and as of 2023 there are 199 residents. So it's a small town. We all have probably been in high school, graduating classes that are probably like 200% more people than that. Um, so yeah, that is how small of an area I am from. And the dynamic that kind of comes from being from a small area like that is that everybody knows everybody for the most part, right? Um, and it's either you're related or just your families have crossed paths for so long. Um, and everybody knows everybody's business. So if somebody's doing drugs or if somebody's sleeping around and has 100 head of kids, you know. And if there are people in your family doing stuff that you don't like, everybody has a tendency to gossip about it. I don't know if they're going to want to say gossiping, but that's what it is. And everybody kind of passes their judgments and stuff in private. And then people see each other out and about and smile and invite them over or tell them they're going to see them at church. And yeah, it is, as much as I love the country and I think it's so beautiful and I really love the people that are there, that is one of the realities of living there. You know what I mean? People are very like cool and stuff and very chill, but like I said, there's this underlying like suppression and repression of having real conversations and working through things. Because for one, also where I'm from, it is still like farmland, cotton fields. So especially like as the newer generations are kind of coming into that, it is hard sometimes to, I guess, be open because, like I said, a lot of those like I know online I think a term is like the trauma Olympics and stuff, but to be honest and to really look at stuff for what it is like my history, as much as people online will tell you stuff or try to have you believe. I know a lot of us don't believe that anymore, but my history is kind of always right, or my family's history is kind of always right in our face. Like I said, it is nothing but like cotton fields there, really, for the most part, and farms and stuff like that. So it's like people have actually been working those fields. Now they're done by machines and stuff, but I mean, like, you know what people were doing there, you know? So to be honest and give grace, it's like, yeah, there is, especially like in the Black community, there was not time to process a lot of emotions. So you're talking about years, hundreds of years of dealing with stuff one way and having to just suck it up and get over it. And you want that to be kind of instantly fixed, and that's not how stuff works. So like I said, the that mentality has been taught, not like let's talk through stuff and work stuff out. It's like we still, like, there is a big drive of suppressing, repressing things, putting on airs for the most part, being able to, you know, not let people know what you got. Like I said, even though everybody knows what's going on with everybody, it's still, when you go outside, don't you be telling my business, or don't you be doing this or whatever. So it's like you're still like masking a lot of stuff, right? We're not talking about stuff, we're masking things and putting on this like concept of self for other people, like so that other people can perceive you in the way that you want, even though everybody kind of like in that situation or in that type of community is everybody knows everybody's business anyway, but you're still going outside and putting on this cool front for everybody else. And even in your own home, we're not necessarily being honest and having real conversations. Like we have, you have conversations about family and stuff like that, and there's love there. But when it comes to problems and stuff, it's like, boy, if you don't get over that, I had to do this, 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 and this, and this, and this. And obviously, that isn't a great foundation of building emotional intelligence, you know what I'm saying? But as an adult, I understand why that type of community is set up like that. And so being in a position of privilege for the most part, even though I have my own battles, is learning to have grace for that. And just be able to meet, kind of my relatives, like be honest with myself, and to just, hopefully that with them, seeing my openness and willingness to meet them in a way that's not judgmental and that's open and that's empowering, that, even for them, they will in tune do the same if they can. Like I said, a lot of these people are getting to the age where it's like very much, they're set in their ways. And like I said, that's not to excuse people or anything like that. That is just reality sometimes. And yeah, at Thanksgiving this year, I was described by a relative as being an angry child. And I was. I was angry, and I was sad, and I was scared. And the crazy thing is that nobody saw me. I had already dealt with some incredibly hard situations as a child, and yeah, there's nobody saw it. And then when I tried to bring up conversation around, like in a little 6-year-old brain, and trying to bring this subject matter to the adults that were around me, it was not perceived well, and I got disciplined for it. So all of that to say, well, for one, that was when I first learned how to mask, myself, and how to, or when I realized that people just kind of didn't see me, or that my voice didn't matter, or that if you do speak up, then there is potential for getting in trouble, whether it be the truth or not. And what came out of that, like not only masking, but learning how to perform my personality. Because even if my pain couldn't be seen, I wanted to be seen, and I wanted time to be spent on me. And, even like I said, I was angry as a child. I was scared. I was, hurting. And since people just didn't see that, and like those were parts of my personality, but I also was a little ham. I am one of those people who pick up on things quite quickly. So I became known as being very talented and very smart, sometimes too smart for my own good, as people would like to put it. Um, but those things bought me time, and they bought me attention, and they made me feel seen. But I have always equated having to earn my spot. And yeah, so that brings us to today's subject. I had one of you guys asking me what it meant, what I meant, or if I could elaborate on the emptying of self and what that looks like in practice. So, yeah, I told y'all that because we all know kids and stuff are resilient. So, I have a hyper vigilant 6-year-old that lives inside of me that has been running the show for quite a while. And God bless her. She, I'm still wearing the same armor that I created when I was 6 years old. And as a person who's almost 36, it's not very comfortable. And I understand why it's there and why it was put in place, but it's leaving a lot of other parts exposed because, like I said, this was the armor of a 6-year-old child. And, I feel like in some ways she was a lot stronger than I am as an adult, but I feel like kids are super resilient because the soul is still kind of fresh, right? It hasn't been hit by life yet. I feel like a child is so much closer to like God and that sort of energy, that untamed, raw energy, right? So yeah, there was a lot of emptying of self out and a lot that I had to do. And like I said, this week, even though I knew this topic, when I went to record, it brought up some of those feelings to where I'm realizing like, oh wow, there's still like a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm still in process, right? And I feel like the more attention that you pay and the more emptying out of some of these old ideas of self, like the more you can kind of, then it just becomes maintenance. It's not, something that can take you to these really raw places because like that came up for me yesterday. That was not a part of my notes, but when I went to record, that background, that history came up for me, and I don't feel like triggered necessarily. I didn't feel like the earth shook out from under my feet. Like, yes, I had to take a day and come back to deal with this today, but I acknowledged it and was able to get here today, right? Also, I'm not going to be speaking of like triggers, I'm not going to be doing trigger warnings and stuff and having to curate myself in that way. I just am not going to do that. So I just feel like maybe you shouldn't listen unless there's like a topic where it's like, I'm talking about music today. I know that's a little late into the episode to be saying that, but anyway, I wrote my notes and I did write them on paper. I didn't think about if they would get picked up in the microphone or not. So like I said, we're still learning, and I don't have a big enough table to be able to look at like tablet notes and stuff. But anyway, what the emptying of self looks like in practice. And that's so crazy that I had to deal with that yesterday. But so first and foremost, to me, the emptying out of self is seeing yourself and truly, truly seeing yourself as you are in the moment, and especially the moments where your soul and yourself is kind of crying out to be heard. That's where it starts, right? And it's not to go into it like wanting to fix anything. Like it's not going into it in that realm. It's just like, because for one, in this society, when we're thinking about fixing things, we're thinking about fixing and troubleshooting like very quickly. And as humans, that's not how that works. A lot of times we are dealing with years, decades worth of stuff. So, to attempt to fix something and to do it quickly so you can optimize and go back to work, or, deal with life, because life doesn't stop for you to be able to get your stuff together. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to work. You just end up going back into that cycle of repressing and suppressing yourself. You're putting on band-aids and patching stuff up, and you're not actually dealing with it because it's not something that you can do very quickly. So the goal is to go into seeing yourself with curiosity, with honesty, to put yourself in the position of being an objective observer, a listener, you know? And also to, once again, to like get out of the narrative of fixing stuff, because you're not broken, right? And I know we've all heard that. You're not broken. We're all out here trying to survive. So at worst, you may be contorted and distorted beyond recognition for yourself, but you're not broken. So we have to, like I said, when you're curious and you can just be objective and kind of see this, the notes might mess me up because I'm like reading and I'm like, oh, I can't miss that part. You know what I mean? But yeah. So when you're going into it to be curious and objective and just being an observer, to try to be as like non-judgmental as possible. And I know that can be very hard, because like I said, a lot of us, or for myself, I always felt like I had to earn love or forgiveness or things like that. So you have to try to, I know that's hard at the beginning, is to like try to bypass some of this stuff, but you just kind of like, you just like, you're building these senses of worthiness and not having to earn forgiveness or love as you're going through the process, because this is such a tender undertaking for yourself in the first place that, you're investing in yourself in that way. And something else that comes with that is, no matter what you've been through, no matter how you were brought up, you are allowed to change your mind. We live in a society that expects so much from people, but won't let people be people. Like they want people to do better, but then it's like if they find out that you're human, then they kind of try to damn you. So it might not be the same group of people that you get to be around after you go through this process of with yourself or whatever, but you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to reevaluate. You are allowed to question your upbringing or what you're holding on to that may or may not be yours. Um and yeah, you can change your stance, your views, and you have to get to the place of being able to do that, because once again, if not, you're going to keep looping in this like shame, this embarrassment, this disgust, this self-loathing, and all this stuff that you've built up around you, you know? And I'm struggling with the notes, y'all. Um and when you're like looping, right? What you're doing is you're like holding on to a life that you don't want. It doesn't fit you. It doesn't feel good. And you're just white knuckling because, for me at least, I was scared like, if I let go of this, as shitty as it is, the way I feel about myself, as much as I am, not allowing myself to heal, not allowing myself to forgive myself, as much as I hate all of this, what if I like let go of all this stuff and it's even worse? You know what I mean? I'm like, I at this point am kind of comfortable with this level of pain that I'm at and that I'm experiencing, because I've already done it for so long. So, it's just, maybe I just need to get over it. Maybe today is just a rough day. You know what I mean? So it's like not even giving yourself permission to get out of the shit that you're in, And it's just interesting because, we all have these different experiences and we all have these different backgrounds, but I don't think any of us escape like assimilation for survival, right? We're all born perfect and gutsy and raw, and we're already deserving of love like when we pop out, you know? But the thing is like, you get born into a family, you get introduced to your family and those structures and how they communicate, how they've gotten through. And, best, for most families, as it should be, they are trying to teach you the best of what they know how, you know what I mean? But that might not be perfect. So you get born into this familial structure. And then, if your family is religious, then you get indoctrined with that. And then you go to school and they're telling you what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. And then you go into society. And then if you're a woman, then you go into a whole nother set of what's acceptable and what's not. And you shouldn't be doing this. A lady doesn't do that. And you should be, all this other set of rules. And then if you're black, you better show up like this, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to do this, or they're going to get you, or you're going to go here, So it's like all these things that get put on you, right? And then it's like, after a certain point, these things start to feel like moral failures if you cannot comply, if you cannot meet all of these standards and this programming that has been put on you. And I feel like for a lot of people, it's not actually like suiting our needs as human beings. You know what I mean? And then like on top of all the programming that most of us get, a lot of, like I said, your familial background might be different, your religious background might be different, but granted, if you live in the US or whatever, you're going to have the same amount of kind of social cultural programming, and I'm sure it's the same in other parts of the world. Even though I've never traveled, I don't have a passport. We got to work on that, guys. But then you start having just like life situations, and those things start to come into play. And when we're encountering some of these situations, whether they're in our control or out of our control, we're responding either in the way that we were programmed, which a lot of time is to just suck it up and deal with it, or it hits on like this repressed or suppressed part of a part of ourselves, and we get triggered and we respond in these very explosive ways. And um it's like then you have this choice of starting to shrink yourself down, or you just kind of give over to this darker part of yourself where maybe in the moment you don't feel as repressed, but you're volatile and your relationships suffer. Or for somebody like myself, I have a tendency to like try to get out of my body. I struggled with alcohol for a long time. I can just get really like floaty and like daydreamy because I don't want to deal with myself, right? So all of this is all just seeing yourself, right? Just this part. So that's just like emptying out of yourself right there, is to notice all of these things and to see these things. And it's like I said, it's kind of impossible to unpack everything at one time. So it's like you might want to pick a thing in the moment to look at it, address it, and to honor it, And so it's like once you acknowledge these things, you're already at this place of like checking in on yourself and kind of figuring things out, right? And you're in a place where you can see what's going on and you can listen and you can hear yourself, right? So when we're just looking at ourselves objectively and being an observer and kind of looking at this long list of things that have brought us to this place where we're at, once you start to acknowledge the things, and you can take accountability for some of the things, and you evaluate and you start to process, like, this is where the emptying out and the healing, and it's like, even if you don't want to look at it as emptying out, but even like integrating some of these parts of yourself, like, dang, this is what happened. Because like I said, it's not that you want to suppress it or to repress anything, but to empty out the feelings, like the self, like the concepts. Because when we're emptying out and we're looking at ourselves in a way that's like just being an observer and being curious and things like that, right? When we're looking at ourselves like that, oh my God, hold on, I lost my train of thought. Okay, we're looking past the concepts of ourself that we have created, right? We're looking past who we wish that we were, who we hoped we were going to be. We're looking past the parts of ourselves that have been informed by our interactions with others and how other people perceive us and how we take their perceptions and put it onto ourselves. So it's unpacking all of that and just acknowledging that, right? So you have to start figuring out what's yours and what's not. What's society and what is you, you know what I mean? And for me to kind of get into actionable practices and to get out of the more abstract ideal of what emptying yourself out is like, it requires a certain amount of discipline to constantly make sure you're checking in with yourself. And I'm not talking about rigidity, because that's where I think for a long time too, even in my like young adult years and all of this stuff, is like, I used to be incredibly like emotionally violent and sometimes physically violent with my own self, because I was just like, why are you like messing up? Like, why everybody else is doing this so much easier than you, and you're just like fucking up, and you're just like, no wonder people don't like you, and this is why you're like this, and da 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 da, right? So I was very rigid, and like I said, I was not allowing myself forgiveness. I'm holding on to shame and embarrassment and being just so defensive and hyper vigilant instead of just meeting myself with what I needed. I needed to be seen, and I needed to be heard, and I needed to like love myself and to forgive myself. And it requires discipline, yes, because you have to learn how to show up for yourself, and you have to do it every day, because it's like after, like, you might feel like, and I think I've touched on this before, where it's like you kind of go with something and then you think that you dealt with it in the moment. And then when it comes back up far down the line, you're like, whoa, what the heck? And you don't feel prepared. So it's like every day you kind of got to take a moment to be like, how was today? Was today okay? Did I show up for myself? Did I do something that I wanted to do? Did I do something that I enjoyed? Or I could have, done this a little bit better. Maybe I could have handled this person a little bit more gently, because the way that I did show up with them or interact with them was not who I know myself to be. And I don't want to be out here being a version of myself that I don't want to be. So how was that interaction? You know what I'm saying? And um it's just like, and I feel like the more graceful and loving that we are with ourselves, we can in turn be that way with other people. You know what I mean? Because we're showing up, like, just like how we kind of spoke about mirrors in the last episode as well. Like, when you're doing your part to show up as yourself, like, and because I feel like at the end of the day, most of ourselves deep down, past the defensiveness, past the fear, past, maybe these unspoken wants and desires, we're all like decent. We're people. We're not perfect. You know what I mean? Like I said, and we got to get past that, because even being perfect and you messing up one interaction, that shit might throw you for, a couple months. I'm a person that I'll replay. I got Blockbuster in my head. I'll replay situations all the time. You know what I mean? And that's not always beneficial. So you kind of got to process the day every day, right? And then, like I said, for myself, I'm a person who, I've learned to start journaling. Is something I actually really enjoy. And even with that, I had to learn how to not curate my thoughts, because I had performed, like I said, performed this versions of my personality for so long, trying to be the perfect version of myself, not the best version of myself, but the most perfect version of myself that I could be, so that I could still, be in this cycle of like people paying attention to me, which I was perceiving as love in moments and stuff, whether that be platonic or romantic or whatever. But yeah, I had to learn how to not curate my thoughts when I was journaling. And like I said, even that took time. Cause I would think things like, bro, what if somebody finds, cause also I had some lack of privacy in my house also. So I literally learned how to like choke down every emotion that I've ever had. So, even when I live with my dog, she don't know how to read. I don't think so. But like, even when I started journaling, I'm like, bro, what if somebody finds these and then they're like, bro, that bitch is crazy, or she got some issues, or like, dang, whatever. I don't know what I was thinking. And it's like, if you do read my journals and you see something that you don't like, that's on you. You know what I mean? But yeah, so for one, journaling really helped me. And because I need help staying in my body, I for those of you who don't know, I have my yoga instructor's license. I might be expired by now, but I do have that. But it's very interesting, because I got that certification in 2023 when I was dealing with a lot of stuff, and it brought up a lot of emotions for me, and which is good. But also sometimes when I think back on yoga, because I don't even do that much yoga now, but when I think about it, sometimes I'm like, dang, I've already done so much to be flexible. And I'm like not talking about, because we all need it to be a certain amount of flexible when we're like dealing with ourselves and others, because life is so different. But I mean, I was like doing a lot of bending over backwards to kind of fit these molds of what I felt like I needed to show up as. And I don't know, for some reason now yoga is sometimes like the physical representation of that. I don't know why. I gotta, because I enjoy yoga, but yeah, that's how it had started showing up for me. And like I said, it might be just because I got that certification right during the time of me hitting this raw open patch of my life. But right now, I really love doing mobility work because it's very similar to yoga, but there is just like, it's just, there's like time under tension. And that's kind of what like stress is. You know what I mean? It's like, or like how we kind of build up our nervous systems and stuff is like because we are going to be stressed. Like, I don't know if you ever seen like a dog when they're sleeping and then we're like, oh my God, he's dreaming. That's so cute. And his little feet and stuff are going. I think, honestly, I've read one time, so I'm not even sure if this is factual, but I read that like when you see dogs doing that, they're actually like regulating their nervous system, like when they're in sleep. And that's why you really shouldn't interrupt them when they're doing that. And even like possums, like after possums freeze and stuff, like they kind of gotta like shake that shit off. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you build your nervous system by like having these stressful encounters, but it's like letting it complete the cycle and get out of you. So like I said, like even I had this revelation yesterday that like for all intents and purposes could have been a stressful thing, but all I did was take the time to acknowledge it. I had to take a day to process it, and we're here because I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was going to talk about in the episode this week. So yeah, so those were some things also, because like I said, I was completely in a place of like not showing up for myself, and like even, you know, feeling like I just was not worthy or deserving of love or forgiveness and things like that, which is also goes into self-esteem and self-confidence and having it like I said, there's so many things, and it's so hard for me to talk about it like just straight at the camera. I'm not, you know, in conversation with anybody, so it's like the starting and stopping points for certain ideals is like very hard for me to comprehend because I'm good at talking to other people, you know, but this is weird. This is a little strange, but I even like aside from like journaling or doing mobility work, which by the way, if I know like everybody charges for everything now, which granted everybody needs to survive and stuff like that, but on YouTube there is this Canadian man, and his YouTube is called EDR Fitness. Every week he has like the membership thing on YouTube where you can do, but also he has like free playlists and stuff. And I'm so hungry, y'all. If you hear my tummy rumbling, I'm so sorry. I'm about to go in a second. But EDR Fitness on YouTube. And yeah, it's a Canadian man. I forget his name, but I do his videos every day. Every day. And I just feel so empowered, and it like really grounds me into my body more than like yoga has for me, or at least in this time period in my life. But he does like weekly, and there's like a beginner and an advanced, and then he also has like a 30-day program for beginners if you're like never done any sort of mobility work. And it's really I just enjoy it. Like I enjoy it. I think they actually have, if you're in Canada, I think they actually have a studio too. But anyway, so I do that. I journal a lot, and like I said at the beginning, when I first like didn't even know how to show up for myself, and this might not work for everybody because as loosey goosey as I am, I also am a Taurus with a whole bunch of Capricorn placements. And so I need a certain amount of structure, but like I said, rigidity does not work for me, and that's something that I found out. But when I first was kind of rebuilding myself, I went onto Google Sheets, and I kind of just had these ideas of like things that I wanted to take care of. So, like I said, I knew that I wanted to do some sort of like spiritual practice or like movement practice. So, I have like mobility on there. I have like somatic exercises, walking Gertie, which is my dog. And then I would do like water, like a little thing for water where I could tick off how much water I was drinking. And I had stuff like, like even skincare stuff, because sometimes like we just try to hurry up and take a shower, get on about your day, and like not invest in that time in yourself. So it was like I would have like my face care, like my gua sha, like stuff like that, and then I could just tick it off. And then I would have stuff like, cleaning my house, because sometimes I hyper focus on either one or two rooms and then the rest of my house looks crazy. So it'd be like cleaning. What else is on my little thing? I have a whole bunch of different stuff. So basically, it's like pick some stuff and that you're interested in, but like very basic things, like very, very basic type of stuff. So I have like journaling on there. I have meditation, prayer, either some sort of working out. I have like mobility, then I have like interests that I'm into. Like I have another guitar and I still have not learned how to play that. But, I have that on there. I have like read fiction, nonfiction, and like I take two supplements, I guess, and that's like oregano oil and chlorophyll and then water. But anyway, basically I put little stuff like that on there. And at the very beginning, it was just like, I picked three that were like my main goals to get done every day. So that of course was like always walking my dog. And at that time it was like meditation, like was something that I had to do every day, right? And so I would just take like a little highlighter, because I actually printed this out. I'm a person that needs things in the physical. I do not like having stuff on my phone and using my phone or like technology for stuff. I don't know. Like it's just not me. I'm so hungry. Okay. But anyway, so I would just like, put a little green or whatever color highlighter and like mark the box. So it was like I would make 7 boxes. So it would be like 7 days of the week, and then have my little list of stuff. And then I had my top 3 that I had to get done. Right. So then after the first week, it was literally like all I could muster was to be able to do 3. But then seeing those things done, I don't know if it's like that gold star thing as a child where you get that and you're like, I feel accomplished. And like I said, these are not heavy duty things that are on this list. But then it was like when I started to see my little green things, and then maybe the next week I had like most of the stuff on there done for the day, or most, like stuff. And they're all like personal things. They have nothing to do with work. They had nothing to do with anything else. It's just stuff for me. But anyway, my camera is about to die. So those were some little things that I had. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope you got something from it. My camera's about to die. Oh my God, I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And hopefully next week it'll get even better. Okay? All right. Have a good one. Bye.